Hello, my name is India Fisher and you're watching Dr. Freedom.
Okay, good evening, folks. This is Dr. Freedom. Time for some Doctor Who news. News from in and around the universe. Well, you know the rest of the story. That could affect you in some strange way. Now, as we all know, Magician's Apprentice, which is the premiere episode for Series 9, aired on Saturday. And so far, it's getting phenomenal reviews. I haven't seen anything real downtrodden on it. Maybe in one or two places I've seen some naysayers on it. But what's driving me mad is there are already articles running around talking about how low the ratings were for a series opener. Yeah, they're going on about overnights. And overnights don't mean jack. Overnights are an early estimate of how many people watched it. And the thing is, so far as I know, that particular overnight figure, which we're going to discuss in a minute, does not even include iPlayer, iTunes, and all that kind of stuff. So, or BBC Player or anything like that. And the thing is, I had a friend of mine, Elijah, who just told me that when he was trying to watch it on the iPlayer, it kept freezing up because of all the traffic on it. You see what I mean? People always, for some reason, keep looking at the glass as being halfway empty, or if not just completely drank. And meanwhile, we had such a phenomenal opening episode. There was something in there for all fans, classic and new. So I don't know what the complaint is about the ratings. Like I said, don't worry about the ratings until the finals come out later this week with the adjusted figures and whatnot, including, all your various online, facilities or apps or whatnot you can watch it on. And if that number is too low, then you panic. Okay, but let's go ahead. As you all know, Jenna Coleman announced on Friday that she is leaving the show. Now, don't panic on that yet. Matter of fact, there's even an article out there that's saying she's not going to make it to the end of the series. Or sorry, I should have meant she's leaving at the end of the series. Duh. See, don't worry. The show's not ending. Don't panic. Oh, no, I slipped. Ah! Okay. But let's go ahead. Let's get straight into the articles. I don't want to bore you to death with my rant. So here we go. Now, this article right here could contain major spoilers. So I'm not going to go all the way through it. I'm going to leave that for you to judge for yourself. But so far, the mirror was pretty close to on with announcing that not only had she left the show, but that she had also won the role of playing Victoria in the upcoming miniseries. Now, like I said, I'm not going to scroll any further down on this one. I'm going to leave this one for you to read. I'm even going to put a spoiler warning at the end of the title of this article, just in case it is true. Because if this article fares true, it doesn't look like Clara Oswald's making it to the end of the season. But once again, that is an if, okay? So we'll check in on that later this season, and we'll see if they, called it right. Okay, but moving on to the more important thing. Look at this. They're already, this was over on the Express. They're already lining people up to replace her. Now, so far, this article pretty much says they're thinking, as far as the favorites, are the two Game of Thrones stars, Hannah Murray and Rose Leslie. And this is a picture of Rose Leslie. I should have found a picture of Hannah Murray to throw on there because I don't think she was on since last season or something like that. But so far, yeah, the companion search has already begun. So, as you know, that's going to go on for quite a while. Because until we get a formal announcement on what's going on companion-wise, this stuff's going to go mad, okay? Just get ready for it. If you haven't experienced a companion search before, get ready for a bumpy ride. Now, here's the thing. If Magician's Apprentice was such a poorly received episode, it was trending on CNN. How many Doctor Who episodes have you know of that trended on CNN? Come on, people, wake up. Also, we don't even have the figures from BBC America or Canada Space yet, and those are usually pretty high. But if you want to read this article, this is Dr. Brewer, Two Big Deaths. And it gives you a little history, and there's a little gallery here. And, it's a nice little assortment of pictures from across the, various eras of Doctor Who. And I kind of like the little flip show they got going here. Check this out. This is pretty neat. And, of course, it goes all the way up to Peter Capaldi. But if you want to read their take on it, it's a little bit further down. Also, if you haven't watched the episode yet, once again, this could be a bit spoiler, but chances are you've watched it already. Also, there's nifty little clips and whatnot, if you want to go take a look at it here over on CNN. Let's keep moving, okay, because I got a lot of articles. Okay, this is one of the ones that really has me scratching my head. Why in the name of Hades is BBC News trying to slam dunk their top-selling drama? What? Now, I know it's a different division and whatnot, but still, Doctor Who sees million desert the open episode. It averaged 4.6 million. Watch Peter Capaldi back for his second series playing the Time Lord, compared with 6.8 million debut from his last year. There were a lot of things going on that night. And I'm not going to make excuses for it. But once again, keep your eyes on the finals. Final ratings. Don't go by overnights. All right, moving on. Stephen Moffat, why he brought back Davros. Let's go ahead and let's skip down to it. He goes, when I was very young, I watched Genesis of the Daleks and began a long plan. He goes, I was doing what I do in my spare time, which is watch old episodes of Doctor Who because I really know how to kick back and relax. He goes, Davros had already returned within the series, and it occurred to me, I think this is just true, there isn't a bad scene between the Doctor and Davros. Whatever you think of the stories, and I think they're all good all the time, every time you have the Doctor confronting Davros in the classic series and in the new series, every time they meet, it's really quite electric. There's something about those two characters meeting, so I've always wanted to have a go at it. Now, and he goes, and what surprised me looking back at the old stories was how little screen time they have together. In Genesis of the Daleks, they have a couple scenes, and that's all. Brilliant scenes, beautifully written and played, beautifully done, but they're very short. They're not long at all. And I'd imagine it in my memory as being most of the story, but it wasn't at all. So my notion was to actually stick them in a room together and see what happens after a long while. So that's, a childhood ambition that hasn't changed into my 50s. And I can understand that. If you ever have a chance, and if you just want to watch the clips, you can probably find them across various sites on the internet. When Davros and the Doctor are together, it's a very, interesting, it's almost like, God and the devil sitting down having a conversation, about, why I feel this is right, why that's not right. Things along that line. It's usually very, very brilliant dialogue between the Doctor and Davros because they're two very intelligent men. They've both done very, very oblong things. And especially Davros, come on. As I said, that guy should be a spokesman for the handicapped. I was trapped in this chair, but I still went out and created a race that could wipe out most of the universe and take on the most advanced race in the universe and probably kick their butt. But once again, I agree with him on this point. It is a brilliant point. They've always had great, I'm trying to say, there's always a great magnetism between those two characters, always a great bit of chemistry. Okay, was that really Peter Capaldi playing the guitar in Doctor Who? Now, for those of you who've asked this question, Radio Times basically tells you, yes, it was. Matter of fact, here's Peter Capaldi and thing in his old band. And like I said, that was him actually playing the guitar, if you are curious. And yes, that is also Capaldi singing in that particular thing. So if you want to go check that out, yeah, because he was a musician, back in the day. So it's not that unbelievable. All right, 9 fairly extreme fan reactions to the Doctor Who Series 9 premiere. I threw these up as a goof. I figured you all get a kick out of reading these because there have been a lot of very, very, interesting stuff going on Twitter, Facebook and whatnot, between, about what went on that episode. And you got to love that. For an episode that was lowly rated, it sure is rocking the net. All right. Now, this is the Doctor Who extra about the Doctor's guitar. I threw it up here. There's a few of these bouncing around over here on the BBC site if you want to watch them. There's one with Michelle Gomez and whatnot. So if you want to go check this out, it's an interesting listen about the Doctor's guitar. I watched this one a little bit earlier today. All right. Now, here's another one. This popped up. This picture has been bouncing around everywhere. Basically about, oh, looky here. They're doing the Abbey Road, infamous Abbey Road picture about the Beatles. Now, if any of you have ever heard of the quote-unquote Paul is dead conspiracy theory about how allegedly, the real Paul McCartney died in his Aston Martin in an accident way back in the 60s, and he was replaced. This was one of the things, the Abbey Road, the famous Abbey Road photo album cover that, they're trying to say clinch the fact that, the band's trying to hint to you that, he's dead, because they tried to say the guy in the front was the Undertaker, and of course, with Clara, being not only barefoot and pointing down towards the ground as Paul McCartney is here. There's the original one. They're trying to say that this is a funeral procession, you see, is what they're trying to display with, well, the reason why he's barefoot is he is the corpse, and they're claiming that's how people were buried back then. And of course, there's the infamous 28 if he'd lived, he'd been 28 years old. And whereas they kind of did the same thing here, and they go into this, and Claire's pointing at her feet and blah, 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 pointing at the ground, indicating, oh, look, I'm dead. And of course, they changed it to 29 because the character of Clara Oswald, if I remember right, would have been 29, quote unquote, if she'd made it to the season. You see, kind of a nifty little take on that particular little piece of urban legend. And it's not like, it's not exactly an urban legend. Like I said, it's more of a conspiracy theory, and it's just plain nuts. I've gotten a laugh out of some of the stuff they put up regarding that. Okay, now this is a nice little interview that was done by the Los Angeles Times. And this Dr. Capaldi, feels at home wherever he is. And if you want to go read on this, I found it to be very interesting. It's a nice little discussion. He goes on and on about traveling and all and whatnot. And I think you'll get a kick out of it. That's why I threw it in here. And if you really are interested about what went on with those particular Daleks, which ones were which, over here on this particular site, Dalek 6388, he goes into each of the classic Daleks, where they came from, like the Andrew Beach Quartet. There were no actual 80s Daleks represented, if I remember right. But, he goes into the remembrance for any. He gives you a good description. Like, this was a reproduction of the Special Weapons Dalek with some nifty things added. And he also brings up about the Cult of Skaro, apparent Cult of Skaro Daleks. No, they're not. They're just mainly reused because there were black Daleks going around long before Dalek Sec. And those were usually either Dalek Supremes or whatnot. And, of course, the new series Daleks all over the place. A lot of people seem to prefer the bronzes. One of the big questions that's being asked is, where were the new paradigm Daleks? And a lot of people are already coming up with theories as to what's going on with that. So, I leave that to you to speculate on your own. Okay, well, that's all the ranting I want to do. I want to thank everyone who participated in the Omega Files this week. As soon as I find out the airtime for the episode next week, if anyone has it, bounce it to me, and then I'm going to determine whether we're going to go at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. recording time for next Saturday. The only reason we went 6 p.m. this last one is I went up to Cincinnati Comic Expo, had a great time at Eve Miles, who, by the way, is adorable. I'm not kidding. If you ever get a chance, she will sit down. She'll talk your ear off. She is just amazing and funny. Okay. But all I can say is I can't complain. And like I said, somebody brought up to me in a comment box earlier about dislikes on the video on the Omega Files. For me, the views speak for themselves. Also, the comment box speaks for itself. And for you guys who went out there and used your troll accounts to down thumb the video, thanks for the 19 views you gave me. That's all I got to say, man. Thanks. I'm loving it. And they did the same thing over on when I asked for new members of the Omega Files. Guess what? Your mission failed once again. Every time somebody trolls me, it always ends up bouncing back in their face. And that's what I love about it. Okay, so until next time, fellas and ladies and whatnot, or whatever gender you choose to be, have a great week, a great day. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll catch you tomorrow night. Bye-bye.